Hey, everybody, welcome to Public Speaking Tips and Tales with Speaking Coach Kelly. We have a fun interview for you this week with one of the coolest people I know. And she's kind of, living the life that I want to live, speaking the way I want to speak. She speaks all over and she's had over 5,000 presentations. She's been on TV and radio, national TV and radio, 50 times, and she has a TED Talk. And if you've been listening to my podcast, you know that I am obsessed with having a TED Talk. And I have so far been turned down 6 times, but I know that I will eventually find the right one and I will have a TED Talk too. So I would like you all to meet the lovely, the exciting, the beautiful Anne Washburn.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's so glad, so awesome to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for being on the show. Um,
Absolutely.
I have so many questions for you.
Well, I have lots of answers.
I'm so glad. All right, so I'm gonna first I'm gonna tell the people how I know you, which is
That would
fun.
be a good idea.
So in 2017, I went to my very first 3-day personal development seminar, and it was called Master Your Influence. And you were there. In fact, you
Yes, I
were
was.
one of the introducers, one of the speakers, and it was awesome. And it changed my life, literally changed my life. And that was the beginning of my path to becoming a speaker and a coach myself, because I was just a fired, depressed graphic designer who was terrified of public speaking and knew nothing about personal development and had no desire to coach anyone at all. So it was a complete transformation. And that's where it started, at that Master Your Influence, March 2017.
Nice.
And you were there and you were amazing. And Kirk told this story about you that I just loved so much, that you made your husband go. You bought tickets, you forced your husband to go to something that Kirk did. And then he returned the favor and he bought tickets and signed you up for something you didn't want to go to. You sat on the back row with your arms folded the whole time, fuming, mad. And of course, by the end, you had changed and now you speak at those events. You speak for that guy that was on stage. So, of course, your husband made a very good decision.
Well, that all came because, my background is engineering. So I was an
Yes.
engineer in flight simulation and explosives, and I loved it because I didn't have to talk to anybody. I was really bad at communication. And
Right.
so when my kids got old enough to go to school, I started having bad experiences with the teachers and the other parents and the adults because I didn't know how to communicate. And I especially didn't know what messages I was sending with my body language. And
Mhm.
so because I had these long held beliefs inside of me that people didn't like me, that they were mean, that they were not things that I wanted to interact with, my body language was always closed and small. And that sends the message to people that well, in a way, we could go into that, but this isn't about body language today. But it sends the message out, causing them to treat you as if you are all of those things. So people would treat me as if I was small and insignificant and not wanted and unimportant. And so as an engineer, I could hide in my cubicle and I didn't have to talk to anyone. And so it got to the point, though, that I was very, very low, to the suicidal low that a
Yeah.
lot of us get to. And so I was watching TV that day and I saw this one. There was nothing on. I was just flipping through channels. This is back before Netflix and all of that. Was clear back in 2010. And so I'm flipping through these channels and I find this interview with a bunch of celebrities. There's probably 10 celebrities standing up there, and they're all standing up waiting for their turn for the interviewer to come along and talk to them. And they all just look super confident and powerful and beautiful and famous. And I'm like, what that feels like. So I stood up
Mhm.
in my living room and I tried on one of their poses. I'm like, okay, they look like this. Like, oh, that feels so weird. But it
Oh,
sparked the thing in my head that I'm like, do they stand like that because they're famous and successful? Or are they famous and successful because they stand like that?
whoa.
And that's why I got online and I'm like, body language. And one of the things that popped up was a free body language show with Kirk Duncan. And that's what I signed my husband up for, because there would be people there. I didn't want to be there. So I sent my husband to the body language show. And while he was there, he signed me up for the Master Your Influence class, which I did not want to go to. And so that's why I went in with my body language in the back and sat in the back and tried to hide from the whole thing. And I actually did a successful job because I went through the whole class and I didn't get noticed. I was fine. I left the event, um, but then through a series of things that happened, I ended up back doing presentations for 3 key elements. And in that capacity for almost the last 15 years now, I have given many presentations, including at the Master Your Influence.
Wow. That's amazing. If I can ask, what are the steps that took you from sitting grumpy on the back row to presenting for 3 key elements? If it's not too long and detailed of a story.
No, I can absolutely tell you, but if you're looking for steps that somebody can follow to
Right.
go into it, they're not necessarily, because here's my steps. So the first step was that, like you've learned about, vision boards are super important. In fact, as I've been taking notes as we've been talking here, one of the things that matters the most, especially when it comes to a TED Talk, is that you have a subject that you're very passionate about, that you have something that you are very connected to visually, mentally, in your imagination, all of it. And so we know that vision boards help us with that, because a vision board is just something where we connect with our dreams, where we can connect emotionally, where we can get past the negative thinking in our head that tries to tell us we can't have that.
Right.
And I put a vision board on my wall and I'd put nothing on it. There was nothing on it because I didn't have anything I wanted that I could think of that was worthy to go on there. And I was walking, I can still remember, I was walking down the hall to my kitchen and this thought came into my head that said, you should put a note on your wall, on your vision board, to have Kirk Duncan mentor your mother. And I was like, okay, that's random and why not? Why not? And I fought with the voice. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So no lie, I literally finally, after fighting much with the voice in my head,
Yeah.
got a sticky note out. I wrote those words on my sticky note, and my vision board was just inside my bedroom door. I went up to my bedroom. I didn't go in it. I reached in and put it on the vision board. And I went, fine, voice in my head. There you go. It's on my vision board. And I was like, oh, shoot. So then a new thought popped in my head, because now I was on my vision board. You should text Kirk Duncan, because back in 2010, he gave his cell phone number out at the event.
Ooh.
And so I'm like, I am not going to text him. There is no way. Nobody's heard this story. This is so funny. And so arguing with the voice in my head, I finally said, fine. And I wrote the text. And then I said, but I'm not going to send it.
You rebel.
I actually said that out loud, and I'm holding my phone. No lie, Kelly. A fly comes and lands on my phone, and I brush the fly away, and it sends the text.
Oh my God.
And
You didn't stand a chance.
I quickly shut my phone off, and I'm like, no, this can't send. This can't send.
Oh, no.
And so I went to get my kids from school, and I didn't think about it. And I finally turned my phone back on when I was in the car coming back from their school, and it rings, and it's him.
Oh my God.
So he said, so long story short, we have this conversation. He agrees that I can sign my mother up to mentor with him. But he says, but you have to do one thing for me. And I'm like, what? And he goes, you have to come to my presentation class, my present yourself class, to learn to be a speaker. And I'm like, I'm not a speaker. I'm not going to that class. What are you talking about? And he goes, You want me to mentor your mother, then you need to come to that class. And I'm like, oh. So
Wow.
that is the steps you can't follow that
Nope.
that took me into the speaking arena, because I had
Oh
no
my gosh.
intention to ever be on a stage. Never
Wow.
wanted.
You were just meant to be there, and everything conspired to put you there against your will.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those aren't steps anyone can follow.
sorry.
It's interesting though. I
But
love
you
hearing.
the vision board is a good there's a good piece. You can follow that step. And so
Yeah.
there are some important steps in there. Have a vision board, be willing to put something on it, and be willing to follow the ideas that come to you because that vision is on your board. Those are followable, very important steps.
Yeah, that's true. And it works.
Mhm.
And I argue with the voice sometimes too. So I totally know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
But once you give into the voice, things happen.
Well, I usually only argue if I'm gonna follow through. Yeah, otherwise I just ignore it. So
That's
the
funny.
arguing is not necessarily a bad thing at this point.
That's awesome. Okay, so TED Talk. Let's talk TED Talk. And again, so I know people can't follow the steps you took to get a TED Talk because, again, yours just the universe conspired to get you a TED Talk, which is awesome. But I want to hear, like, what is the whole process like? What was it like for you? Like, it looks so glamorous and amazing. And then also what changed after your TED Talk? Because your TED Talk has almost 2 million views. That's huge. That's a lot of views. So first let's talk about what was the process like?
Well, first I gotta, because this is what I do. This is what I
Yeah,
use my body language skills for. Is so we gotta jump into
yeah.
one thing you said.
Let's do it.
Well, maybe two things.
Okay.
So one is people are going to be wondering now, well, how did the universe conspire to get you a TED Talk? Well, let me just tell briefly
Yeah,
what
do
happened
that.
there. So I began speaking in 2011. In 2015, somebody who I had met invited me, said, hey, why don't you come experience what a TEDx event is like? And I said, okay, because it was in my hometown. I was raised in Rexburg, Idaho. And so she invited me to come up there and experience a TED Talk. And so I did. And I felt really awkward there. And it was interesting. And then they said, wouldn't you want to do one? Because everybody there that's all the buzz was, oh, I want to. I'm like, I don't want to. I'm like, nah. And so I left this event, but because I was there, somebody I had talked to contacted TEDx Idaho Falls, that is the one where I spoke, and recommended that they contact me as a speaker for their stage. And so they contacted me. So that's what Kelly means when she said the universe conspired against me. But I did go through the entire application process because they did want me to do that,
Yeah,
but they did contact me. I didn't contact them. But you also got to know that it's much easier to apply now, because I know 2010 doesn't seem that long ago, but the internet was pretty new back then. And
right.
if you think about the fact that our smartphones only came out in 2008, I mean, this was not something that was on the internet and you could just find an application and send it in. It was much harder back then.
Yeah,
It's a lot easier now. And there's many, many more stages now, which means there's so many places to apply to. So if I were wanting to give a TED Talk, I would pick now because there's so much more opportunity for it.
right.
There wasn't the same opportunity then. So don't feel bad that it's like, oh, I wish the universe would conspire. It is conspiring for you. It is, because that's why there's so many more stages and so much more
Right.
availability for applications. And you also learn a lot, which you could speak to, going through the application process.
Yeah.
That teaches us a lot. Because the hardest thing for me was that the idea that I would have no control over it. Because I was still, back then, I was only 5 years in to speaking, and I was still very wrapped up in what people thought of me. I
Mhm.
was still, that still pulled on me a lot, and I worried about what people would think of me.
Yeah.
And so that part scared me, because when you give a TED Talk, you have to actually sign that you release all control of it. You have no control of the editing of it. You have no control over um, what people will think of it. If you don't like the comments that are given, you can't delete them. There's no control at all once you give the TED Talk.
That's scary.
Yeah, because so this is a very big growing part of giving a TED Talk, is that you have to let go of that. You have to be okay with the imperfections of it, because so this is the part I wanted to address, is you said you look so glamorous up there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is nobody knows all the unglamorous that's going on in the moment that you're trying to look glamorous.
Right.
And so part of that was so it was in Idaho Falls, and I live in Utah. So I had to drive up there for the event. When I got there, I'd left half my outfit home that I was supposed to wear. And it was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I'd also left my makeup bag home. So I had like half of what makes you look glamorous wasn't available to me up there.
Oh no.
So behind the scene, this happens all the time as a speaker, that you have to be willing to let things look different than they feel, is
Yeah.
how I would put that.
Yeah.
And so when you actually look confident, it makes up for a lot of imperfections.
Yeah.
So being able to practice looking confident, and a big hint to that is probably not what you think.
What?
I don't know, what would you think it is? What's a big hint to how to look confident, but not even if you don't feel it?
I would say smile.
Smile's good, but a lot of people don't know how to have a not nervous smile.
Oh
So
yeah.
a
Yeah.
nervous smile will still give you away. The biggest hint is to breathe, because
Ooh.
when you go on stage, it's really an interesting. So I specialize in what's going on in people's brains, because I do have an engineering background. I am a problem solver. I am a scientist. So in fact, I just spoke for an event on Saturday where there was a psychologist that came up and asked me, "Where did you get your psychology degree?" And I was like, "Well, I don't have one." And they're like, "Well, where did you learn all of this?" Because he's like, "You spoke to this better than my textbooks or my professors in college." And I was like, "Thank you very
Wow.
much."
That's
So
a compliment.
I loved it. I received it. So if you watch my TED Talk, that's what I talk about, is being able to receive the positive that's coming to you. Uh, but the but what I was going for there was the idea that in our brain is trying to send out messages of what our negative identity is.
No.
Yep. Our subconscious, through our body language, is trying to send out the message of what our negative identity beliefs are.
That's so rude.
Yep. Your subconscious doesn't care about your happiness or your success. It cares if you are alive and comfortable. And
Wow.
comfortable doesn't have to feel good.
Oh, wow.
So this is what I choose to use my body language skills for, is to help people interrupt that programming. Because you can use body language skills for all kinds of judgmental reasons. And that's what national television wants you to do, is they want you to pull out the judgment card
Right.
and play it all day long. And
Mhm.
so I actually finally stepped back away from that world, because I said, that's not what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
What I'm passionate about is upgrading the programs that cause us to feel unconfident, to cause us to feel judged,
I
to
love that.
make negative assumptions. And
Mhm.
so to interrupt that, we can use our body language skills. But when you're on stage, here's the thing: your brain tells you to stop breathing, because it wants to because it's worried. It's like, eyeballs, all these eyeballs. If there's 100 people in the room, there's 200 eyeballs. So these 200 eyeballs are looking at you and you're like, and you go into your freeze. And the way
Yeah.
freeze comes out is not breathing. And I learned this on stage because I'm like, why am I always out of breath on stage? I mean,
Yeah.
I
I
gotta,
noticed that I do that.
because your brain is worried about the eyeballs.
Oh
So
my,
the number one, because you asked me in your text message, you said, what are the biggest body language things I see in speakers?
yeah.
Number one, not breathing enough.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
That's awesome to know.
Yeah. And so we often think that when we're up there speaking, that if we take the time to take a breath, everybody's going to go, what was that all about? They're actually not. If
Why are
you
you
take
wasting
time,
time?
we have all kinds of stories in our head. Our brain loves stories. But if I'll just take time to take a full breath, not because what we'll do is we just start using just the top of our lungs and not all the way into our lungs.
Yeah.
So if I pause, and the best way to do it is to actually exhale, not inhale.
Oh,
Because the problem is you're not letting all your air out, so you can't get a full breath. You're just breathing in the top. And that's why you get out of breath, because you're like using this much of your lungs.
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What a good tip. I'm writing that one down.
Good.
I love that. Okay. So that's your confidence tip too,
That's that, yes.
right?
Because if you can breathe, you will look more confident.
Mm,
People
yeah.
look less confident if they don't feel like they can take the time to breathe.
Yeah. If they're panting and they can't get their words out because, yeah, that does not look confident.
Mm-mm. So
Uh,
breathe.
just exhale
Yeah,
all the
and so
way.
that's why you start with exhale is because your lungs, if you start with inhale, then you're just going on top of what you haven't allowed yourself to use
Yeah.
already. So you
It's already
pause,
full.
exhale all the way,
I
you
love
will
it.
automatically inhale all the way.
That's super awesome.
Yeah. So
Okay.
pause and exhale.
Good to know. All right. So you show up at Idaho Falls without
Nothing.
your makeup and half your outfit. What did you
Right?
do?
Well, we went shopping and
That's good.
and we called around and found somebody who did makeup professionally, semi-professionally, and had them come do my makeup.
That's smart.
Um, so that and it's interesting, it's funny to me because people, one of the things they love to criticize in the comments on a TED Talk is what you're wearing. They love to do that. And so when they started making comments about what I was wearing, I was like, you have no idea. You don't know the story behind the scenes. And so you just got to know there will be judgy people, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means that you have the opportunity to grow through a layer. Oh, well, I'll have to give you some background for this. So
Okay.
remember how I said our subconscious loves to send the message of our negative identity that we believe?
Yes.
Because we are wired to defend our identity. The problem is there's always everybody has a negative component to their identity,
Yeah.
and your subconscious will defend that just as much. But if we can peel back those negative identities, we actually access our real positive identity that was being protected under the negative identities.
Oh,
So the negative identities are like these protections that because
okay.
we came to this earth knowing nothing. We came down and we knew nothing. So the early years of our life were spent trying to make sense of our world. And
Mhm.
we took programs between the ages of 0 and 3 years old. The reason you'll have very few, if any, memories of that time is because the prefrontal cortex isn't online yet. You're behaving directly from the subconscious. And
Okay.
so, yes, we're learning language and we're interacting and all of that, but we're trying to make sense of where we fit. And so when things happen, we're also at that age, we're very self-centric. which
Right.
means we think that we're a part of everything. So if
Yes.
somebody's upset, we're a part of that. If somebody is happy, we're a part of that. You know, if somebody is if they're taking care of me, then I've done something right. If they're not taking care of me, I've done something wrong. So
Right.
we pull these programs directly into our subconscious. But usually, I haven't met anybody yet. I don't think there's anybody. There is a negative twist to that programming. And the reason that that's okay is because there's huge value in being able to peel back those negative layers. That's what we're here for, is to peel off our negative layers and access our real positive that we came to the planet with. And it's a fun process, but except for when we're in the middle of it, then it sucks. And it's like, why does this keep happening? Why do people keep treating me this way? Like me, 15 years ago, everyone was always angry at me and dismissing me and didn't want me around and mean. And I'm like, why? Why is everybody on this planet so mean? But when I learned it was my negative identity programs coming out in my body language, now I could do something about it.
Wow. That's really deep.
And that's what I was passionate about for a TED Talk.
And that's what your TED Talk was on.
Yep. So
Wow.
it's so since then, I've had 10 more years of learning I've added to, well, it hasn't been that long. When did I give it? 8 years ago. Since then, I've had 8 more years of learning on top of that. But I gave the simplified beginning version of understanding your body language is directly connected to that subconscious programming. And so there's a value in not in trying to watch everything you do in your body language all day long, because that's not possible.
Right.
But what is possible is to change the programming, and that automatically changes the body language.
Oh. And what's your favorite way to change programming?
Interrupting your body language.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you used to do that with that frying pan event, right?
Well, I still do that. So this event that I spoke at this last week, they contacted and asked, they paid extra to have me actually do a frying pan in front of their whole audience.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I still, once a month, I do a free version of it online, an online free version of it. I just did one on Thursday that's on our YouTube channel. And I pick people to come up on stage on the camera
Right.
and listen. What I'm watching and listening for is when their answers that come out their mouth don't match the answers in their body language. That disconnect is the opportunity. That's where when they're not synchronous, when they're asynchronous.
Right. Yeah.
We have an opportunity to capture a program and choose to do something different with it.
I love that. How did you learn what the body language is saying?
So that process that involved tens of thousands of hours. Well, maybe not tens of thousands of hours of watching YouTube videos over and over and over in slow motion, with sound, without sound, taking notes on everything that I saw so that I could train my brain to hear the body language, to see the body language, to understand the conversation that was going on. So I would watch the same video easily 100 times, and I would write down every little tiny piece of body language that I saw. If the fingers moved, if the shoulders moved, when did they move? What was said? What wasn't said? Can I see the message without the sound? All of thousands of hours of doing that.
Wow. You are really passionate about that if you spent that much time on it.
Oh my goodness. And then when I started doing the frying pan class, I don't know what year I started doing that, but I did just get a text message over the weekend from somebody that says, hey, I don't know if this is still Ann Washburn, but I went through your frying pan class 10 years ago. And I just have to tell you, I'm still benefiting from that life-changing event and what it changed in me. I know I actually cried because
I think I would have too.
That was amazing. So over 10 years I've been doing it. That taught me a lot about body language, because
Yeah.
talk about, you think they were in the frying pan. I was in the frying pan because I had to be on the complete alert.
Yeah.
So if your listeners don't know what the frying pan is, or
Some
that,
probably do, but most probably don't.
so it was just a class where each person had the chance to come up on stage for 30 minutes, and I would mentor them in front of the audience. And the beauty of being in front of an audience was because that added the eyeball pressure, right?
Yeah.
Because people were watching you.
Yes.
And I could help them break through a pattern or a program right there on stage. And it was fantastic. And I still do that. I just now do breakthrough coaching instead of the frying pan. So I've added more personal mentoring to it,
Right.
and than just that. Not just is the wrong word there, but it's evolved and grown, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Do you miss the live events?
Well, it was fun to speak on the stage this last weekend. I will admit that. That was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. But quickly back to the TED Talk. Let
Oh,
me
yeah.
just, because that was our tangent.
Right.
That's what you have to get good at, is remember where you put the tangent.
Yeah.
Back here. So I went through the whole process, which meant they wanted me to, you have to fill out the application, which is what you will talk about and what the title is that you want to give to your event. The title is super important because that is a lot of what the YouTube algorithm goes off of on how to share your TED Talk.
Mm.
So you do want to put thought into the title of your TED Talk. And also the other thing about TED is they want originality. So you can't regurgitate an idea,
Right.
which becomes harder and harder since there's tens of thousands of TED Talks now, or I don't even know how many, probably hundreds of thousands. There's so many.
Right.
But you want your title to be unique and searchable, something that, and suggestible. So searchable and suggestible.
Oh, yeah.
And
Do
that's
some
important.
keyword research.
Do some keyword research, but also then phrase it in a way that's interesting so that people will want to click on it even when it's suggested to them. Because
Right.
people don't click on everything that's suggested to them nowadays.
That's true.
Um, and then the really crazy part is then you have to get your idea down into the 12-minute mark, you know? And so they want, it depends on your event that you're chosen at, but they're going to give you between 10 and 18 minutes, depending on the event. There are a few TED Talks out there that have gone over that. Like I saw one that was 29 minutes that a celebrity had given.
Mm.
But it depends on the event gets to decide that. But
Okay.
generally, because once you've given your talk at the event, it then has to get vetted by the TED committee, and they
Oh,
decide if it followed the rules and will be allowed to be on their platform.
oh, wow.
So there's a lot of vetting that happens.
Yeah.
And so you have to follow the rules of the event. So one of the things they also required was that you read the book Talk Like TED. That was also required for this event.
Good idea.
I don't know if it's at every event, but it was required at this one. And then the fun part then is you get your idea all down, and then you find out it's like 32 minutes, and it's like, okay. Well, that's actually a good thing though, because it requires you to clarify what you're talking about and become better at what your message actually is.
And that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
To say something in fewer words and
Mhm.
be just as powerful. That's amazing.
Written and spoken.
Yes. That's such a good skill to develop. I love that. And, applying for a TED Talk, that's going to give you a lot of skills in that area. Even if you don't get accepted,
Yep.
you're
Yeah,
still building skills.
absolutely. In
Ah,
fact, that was one of the things I talked about on this event on Saturday is I told the story of my daughter. So one of the points I told them was that you need to give yourself points for rejection. And so my daughter, when she started high school, she didn't have any friends, and she came home and complained that she couldn't sit by anybody at lunch.
Oh, that's
And
hard.
I know, we've all been there, right?
Yeah. So
And
awkward.
so my husband challenged her. He said, "Hey, what is a table that you would like to sit at?" And she's like, "Well, just these guys. I would go sit by these guys." And he says, "All right, go try to get them to tell you no. Try to get them to reject you from sitting at their table." And so she did. And they didn't reject her. And she sat at their table, and she came home. She was so excited. She's like, "I did it." And then my husband's like, "Well, on the social hierarchy, who would be the next table up?" And
Oh,
she's like, "Oh, this one." He goes, "Try to get rejected by that one."
oh
And
my gosh.
so she spent a lot of this semester trying to get her nerve up, and then she would go and try and sit at the table, and she never once got rejected.
Oh,
But
I
she
love
was
that.
trying to get points for being rejected.
Yeah.
Our fears usually stop us before other people do.
Oh, absolutely. I see that all the time.
And so pretty soon, she knew everybody at the lunch room, everybody.
Ah,
And
ah.
they all were like, "Kaylee, sit by us."
I love this. Collect points for rejection. Man, that is such a good perspective.
Yeah.
And you gamify it. It's always fun to gamify things.
Yep.
Let's see how many TED events I can get rejected by.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, what's that movie where I'm not going to think of the name of it. It's the one where it's showing the first Latin American in space, and that how many times he was rejected from the astronaut program before he
Oh,
was finally accepted. That's a really good movie. It was only a couple years ago. I can't
yeah,
remember what it's called. Your listeners will probably put it in the comments.
they probably will.
But yeah, that's what he talked about, is he got rejected 11 times
Wow.
from the astronaut training program. I have somebody I mentor who applied to the astronaut training program just once and then framed the rejection letter just to prove that he did it.
I love that.
Yeah,
I should start collecting TED denials and frame them. That'd be really fun. Most
yeah,
of them don't even answer me though. A few have said no, but most of them don't even respond because they're too busy with all the applicants. I understand that.
yeah,
But that's fun. I want to look at it in a different light, collecting rejections.
yeah. And because then we'll push ourselves harder and get more yeses.
Yeah,
That's the thing, is we give ourselves way more no's than other people will ever give us.
that is sad but true.
Yep.
Speaking of comments, okay, I went viral this year and I made the mistake of reading the comments, which I learned my lesson. I won't be doing that again. So do you have any tips?
What did you go viral for?
Me hugging a sloth in Honduras.
Ah,
Yeah. You've been on a cruise with me before, but we
uh-huh.
didn't go to Honduras, right? We went to Jamaica. And we went,
My son served in Honduras.
oh, that's awesome. Well, they have a sloth sanctuary there where they save sloths, and you can come in and hug a sloth. And wow, people were really mad about how we were abusing the sloths. And they were also really disgusted with my weight. And they all wanted to tell me about it. All of them wanted to tell me about it.
Yep.
So yeah, I have learned not to read the comments. And we mentioned earlier you had a similar comment uh experience. You don't read comments anymore. You learned not to.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So the thing is, like I said, that when you give a TED Talk, you relinquish all control, and that includes the comments.
Yeah.
And so when I first started reading the comments, they wanted to make comments about what I was wearing, like I mentioned earlier. And the overall, I mean, if you have to weigh it, there were more positive than negative.
Right.
but we're wired as humans to give 3 times more attention to negative than to positive.
Yes.
And so we'll pay a lot of attention to
I
those
get that.
negative comments.
Mhm.
So when it was the time of that TED Talk, I just had to quit reading them. Now in my life, I've worked on taking those negative identity layers off. So there's nothing for those negative comments to stick to. So I can
Ooh.
read them just fine now because I
Mm.
know that's not about me. And I'm not, and some people will say, well, it's not about you, it's about them. But that's still a judgment. So when I say that I can read them without thinking they're about me, I'm not judging and saying, ooh, it's about them. I'm saying,
Yeah.
I can see some of the program coming out of them because
Mm.
I realized early on if I was going to I reached this ceiling in my abilities probably about 7 years in, which is pretty fitting. And I couldn't get past this ceiling. And I realized the reason for it was because I still held on to judgment. If you have any judgment in you for yourself or other people, you will hit a ceiling that you cannot get past in your
Mhm.
growth and your abilities. If you do get past it by a fluke of some kind, because you'll see people, you'll see celebrities that, or like you mentioned, viral people that are suddenly thrust into the limelight. They wither really quickly
Yeah.
or get in trouble because they haven't gone through that filter. You can't pass this filter without letting judgment has to stay on this side of the filter. So I had to let go of all judgment. I couldn't judge people in any way when I would read their body language or work with them or mentor them or coach them, because then if I kept doing it, I couldn't improve my skills further. So I've been able to let go of, I'm not I'm not 100%. We aren't. Nobody's perfect.
Right.
But my ability to separate that out from judgment is probably 90% at this point.
Wow.
So I can read the comments and not take it personal.
Yeah. I love that you say it didn't have anything to stick to because
Mhm.
you'd remove that negative layer.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Do you have
Yeah.
any tips for letting go of judgment?
Oh, it starts with, well, so those layers that I'm talking about, the outer layers
Mhm.
are the most attached to judgment because you've heard to use a cliche, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
And so the trick is to learn not to take things personal. And it's not a tip thing. I mean, I do a whole class on that because that
Wow.
lasts for 14 weeks because it's a process to be able
Yeah.
to not see everything as meaning something about me.
Yeah.
So that process of removing those negative identities, they're going to be things like I'm unlovable or I'm unwanted, or and they'll manifest as fears. I'm afraid of being abandoned. I'm afraid of being taken advantage of. I'm afraid of being alone. All of all of these things are things that are um, trying to show us that we have a negative layer.
Okay. That's really interesting. And I could see why that would take a 14-week class.
Yeah.
That's big and deep and not quick and easy.
No, but it is worth it. It is worth it.
Yeah.
If you catch yourself sabotaging a lot, self-sabotaging, avoiding success, avoiding people, telling yourself no instead of yes, all of those things are indicators that I've got a fear that is trying to protect me, and it's
Mm.
not true. Those fears don't actually protect us. So
Yeah.
fear of conflict, fear of being overwhelmed, fear of being helpless, fear of being inappropriate or incorrect or worthless or wrong. Like my dad, he's grown through it a lot, but that's his is fear of being wrong or corrupt. You'll never meet a more honest, upstanding, kind, caring person, but that's his deep fear.
Wow.
And my mom, her deep fear was always safety. She's afraid of being alone or somebody betraying her, even though everybody in her life was extremely loyal. They don't always match our
Yeah.
reality.
Right. That's really interesting. Humans are fascinating, aren't they?
Mhm.
I love humans.
They are in pain,
Yes. Right. Mm,
but that means that they have access to a lot more joy when they learn how to get past the pain.
yeah. That's a blessing.
Mhm. But okay, back to the TED Talk for just a minute. What I was saying is the fun part is once you get it down to the time that they give you, now
Yeah.
you have to go to events where you practice it. And so they have you go practice it in front of different judges. And some of them didn't get all the way to the stage at this particular event. I
Yeah.
don't know how all the TED stages work, but that is at the one I was at. That's one of the things is they practiced them and some of them didn't make it. They had to approve the final product because you're representing them at this point. So they're putting their logo on you. So
That
so TEDx Idaho Falls was putting their logo on me, so they had the right to measure, test, measure, and adjust.
right. That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it came time for the event, I'll just tell you one more part of it here that people may not know. Um, they almost always sell tickets for the event, and then they want to make sure there's a full house and everything. But here's another thing I wasn't prepared for, and it was really interesting, is that when I got there, one of the other speakers, for some reason, hated me. And I had never met her.
Oh my gosh.
I had never met her, but for some reason she really did not like me. And she was kind of vocal about it. So you have to be prepared to manage your own emotions and energy when you arrive at the event. So just like I said, you have to let go of control. You also have to be you're letting control of the finished product, but you actually have to retain complete control of your own emotions and responses because you are a representative at that point. You're a representative of your message and
Mhm.
you're a representative of the TED event. And so you want to be the kind of person that can handle that and not send daggers back to that person.
Right.
Being willing to send back um, kindness and love and acceptance, even
Right.
while they are not treating you with the same measure of respect.
Yes. That's a challenge when
Yeah.
that happens.
So you get to practice it other places.
I love that.
If you want to give a TED Talk, you practice not letting people decide your mood, not letting people decide your emotions or your reactions.
That's a really good thing to practice for
Yep.
any reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. This is a good one.
So tell me the story of what you wore on stage. Mhm.
All right. So Kelly was saying before we got on that she likes funny stories, and I said, well, here's one. One of my first times on stage, on a stage that was over 200 people. So it was a fairly large stage there. I think we had 400 people at this event. And
That's a
so
lot.
when I arrived at this event, for the speakers, they had a hotel room that was reserved just for them. It was like the green room was this hotel room.
Yeah.
And so I had arrived early. I arrived and I went into this room and I thought, okay, what's not ready? And I looked down and I'm like, oh, well, actually, when I walked in, somebody had said, Anne, your skirt's really wrinkly. And I'm like, oh, okay. So in this green room, there was an iron. And I'm like, okay, I'll iron my skirt. So I take off my skirt, I have just my slip on, and I put the skirt out and I immediately ironed a wonderful, huge hole in the front of the skirt because there was a reason I hadn't ironed it that I hadn't thought of, and that's that it wasn't the right kind of material to iron. So I didn't have a backup skirt with me. And this is another thing to know. We get to solve problems quickly. When you are representing or you're going to be on a stage, you solve problems, you
Yes.
make do. We solved this problem by getting, luckily it was a black skirt. So we got big black gaff tape that they taped down cords in the room with.
Yeah.
We taped the hole, and then we were able to angle it just a little so you couldn't really tell. And off on stage I went.
That's
We
awesome.
I like to think of it this way, that any experience, any event we're doing, we're either going to love it or learn from it.
Yes.
Don't say that you hate it. Don't say it was
Never.
terrible. You either love it or you learn from it, or you get a great story out of it.
That is a great story. And what did you learn from that?
What I just said, that we get to love our experience or
Oh,
learn from it.
that's what you learned from that one. I thought
Yeah.
maybe it would be bring a spare outfit.
Uh, no, I still don't do that. So I guess I
Okay.
did not learn that.
No,
But
you still
I
learned a good
also learned that we are way more wrapped up in the details than the audience is.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody noticed. Nobody, maybe a few people in the front row noticed. Most people didn't notice. And to let ourselves have permission to be human,
Yeah.
even when we're being looked up at.
I love that. Good lesson. And if you want to be a speaker, you're going to be looked at a lot. So
Mhm.
learn how to just own it. Be yourself, be a human, and don't
Well,
be perfect.
and remember that it's actually not about you.
That's
It's
right.
it's about your message. It's not
Yeah.
about you. And ultimately that makes it about the audience, not about you.
Yeah.
No, nowhere do I speak and think it's about me. Every time I speak, it's about what message do they need to hear? How do I not get in the way of that message?
Ah, I love that. That is a lesson that it took me a little while to learn that one because I've been speaking for 7 years now. And at first, Anne, it was all about me. It was all about, oh my gosh, look what I did. I'm a speaker. And I was really excited about it. And I look back and say, yeah, I totally made it about me. So that's a lesson it took me a while to
Now,
learn.
there are several ways that we make it about us that we might not see as making it about us.
Okay.
Yours is the most um the usual way of looking at it, that it's like, yeah, I want people to look at me. But notice I didn't go into speaking because I wanted anybody to look at me.
No,
I
you didn't.
absolutely did not.
You
But
kind of got dragged kicking and screaming on that.
and crying.
And
But the way I made it about me was the fear of judgment. That's
yeah,
still making it about me. So I
yeah,
may not have chosen and wanted the limelight, but I still made it about me by being worried about the judgment.
yeah, good point.
So it's important to recognize both of those, that either way, we're still making it about us.
Yeah,
And the third way is when we think that we are the ones delivering the message. We're the ones not getting in the way of the message.
I love that viewpoint. I've never heard anybody say that before either. Getting in the way of the message. That's really beautiful and kind of profound.
Yeah. So if you want the limelight, if you're afraid of judgment, or if you think the message is yours,
Yeah.
those are all ways that you're making it about you.
Yes. Good things to watch for. Hmm. Well, before we go, I know that everybody that listens to this is going to be like, oh, I want to know about more about Anne or your monthly webinar or your 14-week class or anything. So A, how can people contact you? And B, is there anything you want to share with the audience? Like a free
Sure.
gift or anything like that?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
So I have an audio that I recorded. Well, if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, I
Yeah.
have audio that I download or that I recorded called the buckets list.
Okay.
Not the bucket list, it's the buckets.
Buckets plural.
It's how I got past fear to be able to keep doing what I'm doing.
Nice.
And another one called Perfection is a Direction, Not a Destination We Arrive at.
Oh, I love that.
So I'll gift both of those to your audience.
Oh,
If
thank
they will
you.
listen to them, they
Nice.
will. And so I'm going to ask you to listen, but also take an action based on what you listened to. Because when we learn something new, it has an expiration date. If we don't act on it, we have to relearn it. This
Yeah.
is why we end up learning the same lessons over and over, because we actually haven't acted on them.
Right.
So I'm going to ask, that's what I always ask is,
I
I'll
love
give
it.
you a free gift, but please take action so you don't
Yeah.
have to keep relearning it over and over and over again.
Perfect. Okay. What's the action?
And so yeah, you got to pick your action after you listen to it, right?
Oh, good. Okay.
That's what I'm saying is pick your action and take
Love it.
an action based on what you learned.
Okay.
The way you get these is you can put this in the comments
Yeah,
maybe,
I'll put it in the show notes.
but it's 3KE. No, it's 3. Oh, I'm going to lie to you now. Let me see.
Whatever we put in the show notes will be accurate.
There you go. But I have it right here on a slide I made actually.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, it's 3kegift.com
Nice.
/Ann.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. And Anne does not have an E on it.
No, I'll type it in the chat for you so that you
Perfect.
can see it.
Thank you. I love that.
So that's the short link. My email address is Ann at 3keyelements.com. And so if you want to get a hold of me directly, and my free webinar, if you email me there, I can give you, I just did my free webinar last week.
Okay.
So the next one won't be till September,
Okay.
but it will be at this short link, 3ke.to/hot seat.
Oh, nice.
That one, it will give you the help you register for the next free webinar.
Awesome.
But if the link isn't live when you go to it, it just means that I just barely did one, and you can go look at the YouTube channel and see the recording.
Oh, I love that. Okay, great. And what's your YouTube channel?
3 Key Elements.
Nice. All right. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes.
Oh,
for
I
people to
even
go find.
have, if you want the TED Talk,
Yeah.
I made a short link for that one as well.
Oh, perfect.
And it is 3ke.to/Ann TED Talk.
Oh, good job. Okay.
Yeah.
I will pop all of those in there.
And Kelly was just asking me at the beginning, she goes, why did you start your TED Talk by saying, what was it?
Oh, it says the first words I hear are, okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So those, that's where I talk about, where I was talking about earlier, that you have to let go of all the editing of the event. So they had me behind stage, and when it was time for me to go on, they turned on my mic and I had to be silent and walk up to the dot, and nothing was said until I started the TED, my part of the speech. So I'm not sure where they got that from, but they included that in the editing, and I'm not even sure that it's me that says it. But yeah, that
That's so
and
funny.
if you watch other TED Talks, you'll see they do the same kinds of things. There's weird editing things that happen.
Yeah.
I saw a TED Talk recently that just to my point that your title matters.
Yeah.
His title was amazing, and the TED Talk was really floopy. The cameraman was all over the place. The guy didn't stand on his red dots, so he was
Oh,
pacing the stage back
no.
and forth, and
Oh my gosh.
I was just like, why has this got 1 million views? But it's because the title was amazing. So
Wow.
anyway, when you
Good to
watch
know.
TED Talks, now you'll see them differently based on what we talked about today.
Yeah, for sure. A little
Yeah.
backstage knowledge.
Yes. So if you actually, oh, instead of my email address, I should have given you this one. I forgot. I made a new one.
Oh, we can put that one in instead.
All right. It's 3ke.to/talk to Ann.
Oh, that's easy.
That one instead of my email.
Perfect.
Yeah, I forgot about that. We just did.
Awesome.
So yeah, that'll be great.
All right. Well, this was so fun. I learned a lot.
Good. I'm
You're
so
always
glad for having
so,
me.
you're welcome. You're always so interesting. I love it.
When you've studied something a lot, you have a lot to say.
Yeah, I love that about you. That's
Well,
awesome.
thank you.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much, Anne, for being a guest. And if you want to connect with Anne, check the show notes. So I will have all of her links. And we will see you all next week. Thanks for listening.
And make sure to take action on the gift. When you download it and listen, choose an action step and take the action step.
Yes. And maybe they should report it to you in an email.
There you go.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.